I'm not one for reading the Steam forums much, but before I set off making this video I took a look and honestly I was doing some major face palming at some of the posts and comments about Company of Heroes 3 pre-alpha, which reminded me why I don't read them in the first place. That said, I would love to hear your thoughts on the game down in the comments below, as long as you can keep the criticisms and the conversation sensible. I don't want to end my day with a palm print on my head, please. But let's get into it with some background and then talk about the game in sections. I came into the Company of Heroes 3 pre-alpha expecting a big mess because, well, it's a pre-alpha, and for those of you who don't know, that's before the formal testing starts with an alpha. So you should go into these things expecting massive numbers of bugs, poor optimization, poor graphics, missing models, missing textures, unfinished UI, poor options support, poor sound, likely no voiceovers, haphazard missions that probably won't finish, and loads of crashing, as well as probably failed saves. You know, the list goes on. And I have to be honest, when Relic announced a pre-alpha, I thought they were bonkers, because a lot of people just wouldn't understand any of that. And I was partially right. You can go check out the Steam forums for that. Plus, you know, the last game they put out was Dawn of War 3, and that was a terrible game. It lost them my confidence and that of much of the community, and they know it. They pulled support from the game long before they intended to. And I just can't sugarcoat that one. That was a huge cock-up on their part. However, in fairness to Relic, in terms of the Company of Heroes 3 pre-alpha, what they actually put out was a lot more complete than I expected. Yes, there are bugs, there are missing animations, models, etc, etc. But a significant amount of the gameplay was there. Heck, they even had some voiceover work already done, and some of the actual missions with objectives. They were a little haphazard, of course, but it was there. So, for this first section, let's talk about the big new campaign map. Now, there was a lot going on here. Probably not as much as Total War games, but somehow I still managed to forget about some things as the game went on and on. But what did it do well? So, I love the entire concept of the game map. I think they're headed in the right direction with this campaign map. It feels like you're actually truly progressing through a military campaign while putting you in control of the strategies and tactics you want to use. The fact that units act like they do in the RTS map was also quite a fun mechanic, so the engineers and their ability to build defences, remove obstacles, and repair bridges, that was a really nice touch. And along the same lines, I liked how different squads near you when you went into an RTS mission gave additional options for the effectors or for just calling in units during the mission. I also like the fact you need to scout areas to find things like mines and where enemies are hidden. And this was a nice mechanic that encouraged you to use both the recon planes and the partisan abilities. But the fact that units could be hidden and ambush you was again a really good idea. It threw me off a few times as I had units get caught out and die. My only complaint would be that once these units fire and are spotted, they probably shouldn't vanish again immediately if your unit is stood right next to them. The other special abilities such as artillery, bombing, ship artillery were really fun. However, I am having an ongoing debate with myself as to whether they were too powerful at times. That said, I think they are really important to be able to take out enemy defensive positions. So what didn't work so well? Well, one thing was only being able to give one unit a command at a time. I understand that this is turn-based, but sometimes they take so long to walk somewhere, I just want to give another unit a walk command as well. The game should really give some kind of reminder that you have unspent skill points, as I kept forgetting they existed, especially with going away on holiday for a week and then coming back to the game. The influence rewards were just kind of there as a message, and I had no real idea if I was getting any bonus from them. It really needs to be more obvious what they do and why they're there. Another big issue was that I didn't always understand when I was going to go into an RTS mission. While I eventually worked out that fighting an enemy company would lead to an RTS battle, it was sometimes hard to figure out what else would trigger one. I think a slight change in the pointer when moving on to a town had an effect on that, but it wasn't overly clear. It would also have been nice to have some kind of advanced warning of the type of RTS mission you were going into, such as was it going to be a standard skirmish, was it going to have additional mission objectives within that, were you going to have a limited number of troops to play with, etc, etc. Because obviously then I was going into them not sure what to expect, and that was kind of frustrating when you're pushing a game mechanic where you have certain companies which are good at certain things. And as a result, I didn't know if I was taking the right company for the job. Some units on the campaign map did not behave in a way I would have expected. A good example of this being the mortar team. Surely this should have an ability to deploy, and then an artillery or mortar option similar to the artillery company, obviously with much reduced damage in comparison. Then the whole units engaging in combat with each other on the campaign map. Sometimes units were being damaged significantly or killed by units that really shouldn't kill them. For example, should an AT cannon team really be killing an infantry squad? I really feel like on the campaign map, more so than the RTS map, there should be a rock paper scissors system in action. And the last thing that really stuck out for me as a problem on the campaign map was positioning of the unit icons. There were times when the icons were so high up compared to the unit that it made the unit seem like they were in a different position, especially if they were hidden in trees and things and you couldn't really see them. So I was artillerying the wrong spot. And that also happened in the tutorial when it was telling me to go to a specific point or do a specific thing, and I couldn't really tell exactly what it wanted me to do because of the positioning of the icon. So that needs looking at. And I have a couple of general comments on the campaign map. I would have liked to see the ships in action against other ships. I hope that is the plan, to have some ship-to-ship combat, even if it's just on the campaign map, and not just they provide fire support with artillery. It would also have been nice to know the effect of the partisan abilities such as blocking supply lines. I didn't really understand what that achieved. I mean, was it stopping them from sending more units there? Was it stopping the units that were already there from being able to move? I'm not entirely sure. Now, don't get me wrong, I have plenty of other thoughts, and I've talked about them a lot as I've played the game and have recorded all that. However, I equally don't want to make this video an hour long, so I've tried to stick to the main things that have kept coming back to me over and over again as I've played. So let's move on to the RTS missions, and right off the bat, one thing I really liked were the effectors, the additional options to select what support you wanted on your mission, and that was a really nice addition. Though it was not always clear why I could only select one for some missions and two for others, and hovering over the sort of icon there didn't really provide any details. I think it was because I was the one being attacked, but I'm not sure. I also like the fact you got additional call-in options from other companies or squads that were with you at the time. The combat was fun, there were clear options as to how you could play a skirmish, being either aggressive or defensive, much like the old Company of Heroes games. Now I tend to play these games in single player as a build a defensive line and then push forward with that line. And that was an option that I could use, though I also kind of wish the AI would sometimes break through more and force me to alter my tactics. However, I know that won't be for everyone, a more predictable AI is preferred by some. The breach and clear option was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed watching the engineer squads with a flamethrower. When they cleared a building, there was something very satisfying about it. Now the base building was nice and smooth, and I think it's basic, but that's all it needs to be for a Company of Heroes game. Now obviously, equally there were some not so good things about the RTS missions. The additional mission objectives are a nice thing to have in there, but jumped around a lot, were rather random, some were clearer than others, and some did just not seem to fit with the current mission. And as above, as part of the campaign map, it would have been nice to see what kind of mission you were heading into. I mean, maybe it was noted somewhere, but I really didn't notice it, so it wasn't very clear if it was there. And a few of the win conditions on the skirmish maps were a little bit weird, such as encircle the enemy. Was that not just basically control all the points on the map really? And thinking about the units specifically, mortars stood out to me as being quite inaccurate. Even though they could see the enemy unit and it was sort of a medium range, they would just keep missing. Though they were very accurate against buildings, so it was a bit hit and miss with them, but I think their accuracy needs looking at. Some of the small tanks were maybe a little bit too strong, or it was just because the AI didn't know how to deal with them. And again, that sort of comes into the next point, which was that the AI didn't use much armor, though I expect this was due to the predetermined difficulty level, or that the AI just wasn't properly set up for using all of the buildings. A couple of general comments about the RTS missions were that there were some very easy ways to cheese the AI with recon and artillery on their base, but I do not expect that to make it into the final game. And now I've deliberately not talked about a lot of the other bugs and errors and animations and graphics etc, because all that is to be expected in pre-alpha, and there's a lot to do before the game is released, so that will at times have affected gameplay, like units getting stuck in a loop of setting themselves up like mortars and machine gunners, but I haven't mentioned that because that is a bug and it will be fixed. They're not going to leave that in there. So things like that I've not mentioned as issues. And equally, I've not talked about the fact that, you know, this was a standard RTS skirmish gameplay and it was good for what it was. You know, I don't need to really repeat that. It's the same in most RTS games. I mean, overall, I was firstly blown away with how far along the game is already. I didn't expect a product this far down the development line. I was expecting the bare minimum, a skirmish map, a few missions perhaps, not a working, for the most part at least, campaign map. And I really like the campaign map. I think it's a step in the right direction for single player. There are obviously things that need to be tightened up and improved on, but at the end of the day this is a pre-alpha, so that's to be expected. The RTS gameplay was equally very enjoyable, but again needs tightening up, and I need to reserve judgment on the AI for now, as clearly that has a long way to go and there wasn't really a choice of AI difficulty. I also think that the mission objectives need a rethink. They need to be tightened up, it needs to be more clear what they are and the type of mission you're going into. Otherwise it's going to become very frustrating when you're trying to position certain units in certain places on the campaign map. But overall, I enjoyed it more than Company of Heroes 2, and I know some people love that game, but I always preferred the original, and from my point of view, this somehow slips in between the first and second games in terms of its gameplay in the RTS field at least. That's the best way I can think to describe it. Now it'll be very interesting to see how this thing plays in multiplayer. Hopefully you won't have access to the same things, or it will be very easy to use some abilities to cheese other players. We should find that out sooner rather than later when they let us give it a try. Now, the final thing to say is that as it stands, I would likely buy the game if they keep on this path. However, they are still early in development, there is a lot that can and will change between now and when the game is eventually released, so I can't with any confidence say that Company of Heroes 3 will be a good game when it is indeed eventually released, because they would not be the first development team who've done a 180-degree turn in the middle of their development. So it's something we're just going to have to keep a close eye on. But obviously, as you can tell from most of my summary, my feelings towards the game are generally positive at the moment. And I will endeavour to put up more of my gameplay, as I know for those who have maybe not had chance to play, it's nice to see the game in action, even if I'm talking nonsense over the top of it. However, that's it for this video. Please smash that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to comment below your thoughts on the game. Sensible discussions welcomed as always. Have a fantastic week everyone, and I'll see you all soon for another video.